I'm grateful to be here and to share with you some questions and some tentative answers about the subject of this conference of pertaining to innovation. Peter Drucker was famous for many, many things. But as I've studied all his work, and we've just completed a massive 3-year project trying to understand the root of his thinking, where it came from and where it led, I've become more and more impressed with the questions he asked. And there's been a question that has been gnawing at me since I've been invited to this conference. And it's been gnawing at a couple of people around me who I've been bouncing it off of day after day after day. The empirical evidence is in. America is the greatest innovative machine in the world. Okay? Thanks in part to people like Peter Drucker. The question then is, why are we in such desperate straits? Why are we carrying a $14 trillion deficit? Why are people putting us in the category of Greece? I care about America. I am the son of immigrant parents. I care deeply about America. And this really troubles me. So I am both going to pose this question to you and try to give you a few tentative solutions or a few tentative explanations as to why I think we're in the shape we're in, given what you've seen here today, this extraordinary display of innovation. My answer comes to the subject of virtue and its role along with innovation, something Peter Drucker exemplified in his life. And I've concluded that it takes both virtue and productive innovation to shelter the fruits of innovation for future generations, and not to rob the next generation because of what we and our previous generations have done. I cite the case of the invention of the implantable pacemaker. This, by the way, is the pacemaker Peter Drucker had in. It was invented by Wriston Greatbatch, now a man in his twilight years, in his 90s. Happens to be my brother's father-in-law. So I am intimately familiar with this case. Others had worked on the pacemaker before Wriston, and he took advantage of all of that, and there were external pacemakers. But Wriston developed the first implantable cardiac pacemaker. And then he followed that invention with a second invention, which shifted the battery source from mercury zinc to lithium iodine to extend its life. The story of how Wriston came about to do this is miraculous. He was working for a company in upstate New York. He's a Cornell-educated electrical engineer. And it came down to implanting the pacemaker within a human being. And the company, of course, was looking for insurance, liability insurance, product liability insurance. And they went to the king of kings of insurance, Lloyd's of London, and Lloyd said no. And so Wriston was faced with a choice. He had five children and a wife. Do I leave my job? Or do I give up this 25-year quest for an implantable cardiac pacemaker? I'm going to quote directly from him. He chose to leave his job. I quote, $2,000 in cash and enough set aside to feed my family for 2 years. I put it to the Lord in prayer and felt led to quit all my jobs and devote my time to the pacemaker. I gave the family money to my wife. I then took the $2,000 and went up into my wood-heated barn workshop that's in Clarence, New York, outside of Buffalo. In 2 years, I built 50 pacemakers, 40 of which went into animals, 10 went into patients. We got 50 pacemakers for $2,000. Today, you can't buy one for that. There's a Medtronic show going on, and you'll see the relevance. Then in 1962, after implanting the first one with a cardiologist, you have to have a cardiologist, a fellow named Charda, in 1962, he licensed the technology of the implantable pacemaker to Medtronic. At that time, a firm that was, from all I can read, on a shaky ground. So he wrote a tight agreement, and essentially, from my understanding, is that he managed the process for a while. So in this example, we see a virtuous individual entrepreneur driving life-saving and innovation. He marshaled his resources, and humanity now is his beneficiary. How many of you know of people with pacemakers? Yeah? Okay. I know a couple. So the question is there a way to ensure that our innovation machine will produce lasting prosperity? And I believe it comes down to leadership. So long as our leaders are good, and this kind of innovation is strongly encouraged and rewarded by our society. But when abuses occur, and we've just lived through a cycle, in 2002, Enron, WorldCom, so on. In 2008, the AIG economic meltdown. When these abuses occur, do our leaders stand up against the flagrant abuses that have brought us down? Not necessarily. Peter Drucker had another longtime friend, Walter Wriston, the longtime CEO and chairman of Citibank. If you pull out your credit card, you will see that Walter Wriston, Citibank inventor, innovator, and also the innovator of global transnational banking. Wriston died in the same year Peter Drucker died, earlier in the year, in January 2005, and he was asked in an interview, his last interview shortly before his death, as you look over the business landscape today, how would you say CEOs are performing? It's an interesting question, and the answer to it, I ask myself, where are the business leaders? My mentor, George Moore, would have described them as playing mouse. They're hiding. Who are the spokesmen for American business today? Name one, quick. Wriston was asking, where are today's business leaders who need to speak out against flagrant abuses, who are not afraid to be visible? He asked, so why aren't their business leaders standing at the barricades today? Because they know if they do stand up, the media, with justification, will ask, hey, how come this guy earned $200 million last year and got $1 million in registered stock besides? And by the way, the interest rate on his deferred comp is 12%. Wriston went on to say, business leaders haven't got an answer for that. They may feel in their heads that their position on compensation is indefensible. When I, Wriston, retired from the local bank here, there was nobody in my industry who made $1 million a year. You could argue we weren't worth any more, and you'd probably be right. But the difference between 950,000 and 200 million is quite a stretch. America seems to be slipping away from the promise which inspired Peter Drucker, the father of modern management and of systematic innovation, and a generation of others. Peter Drucker's creed, value and service first, profit later, has been seen by the New York Times as off the mark and out of date by the corporate world's heavy hitters for 30 years. And we have been reaping the consequences, most notably in the systemic decisions made by individuals, organizations, government contributing to the AIG economic meltdown of 2008. The decisions were complex. They're motivated by greed, mistakes in judgment, and political expedience. When we stop and look around, we find that there has been a void of leadership, courage, responsibility, and virtue. Feelings of doubt, pessimism, and greatness lost are filtering into society and causing individuals to seek radical changes. Look around. The emotions underlying the Tea Party, public outrage about CEO pay, and the thing that hurts the most for me, the sense that our political and economic system has broken down. Thomas Jefferson, our third president and the drafter of our Declaration of Independence, that incredible document, believed that revolution was necessary every generation to cure our society of these kind of abuses. But revolutions are unpredictable in the course they take and can easily lead to ugly outcomes. In Peter Drucker's early years in Europe, revolutions led to totalitarianism in Germany, Italy, Russia. Even now, the course revolutions will take in Egypt and Libya is uncertain. Rather than revolution every generation, Drucker called for peaceful, constant, and systematic innovation and change in all of our society's institutions. His seminal book, Innovation and Entrepreneurship, published in 1985, details the 7 categories of innovation, innovative practice, or windows of opportunity to guide systematic innovation. We've talked about 3. The pacemaker was based on new knowledge, built on the existing base. The battery from mercury to zinc was a process need. Necessity is the mother of invention. Walter Wriston changed the structure of the banking industry. Walter Wriston and others at Citibank changed the structure of the banking industry. 3 of the 7 sources that Drucker talks about. But then bringing it closer to home, what can we do to foster constant productive innovation? How do we recover America's inspirational promise? We see that innovation is not enough. We also need to develop virtuous leaders. There are at least 3 things that each of us can do. 1, embrace virtuous practices of living and working. Human beings have great potential, but these can be dampened by excessive legalism, the letter of the law. And here, my exemplar has been Alexander Solzhenitsyn, prisoner of the Cold War, who knew how it was to live in a lawless society and rejoiced in the legal system of America, but who also knew that the legal system was not enough. I quote, "When the tissue of life is woven of legalistic relationships, there is an atmosphere of moral mediocrity paralyzing man's noblest impulses. we should not ask what is legal. Instead, we should ask what is legal and what is right, and practice both. We may be discouraged about our potential to make a difference, but because after all, we are only one person. But Wilson Greatbatch was one person. Peter Drucker was one person. Walter Wriston was one person. Yet they each were unbounded innovators and devoted their lives to producing a better society. The second thing we can do is stand up for virtue, and we did in this book, and we're getting it for it, because that's what happens when you stand up for virtue. The people who will respond, and it gets close to home. So you see, Drucker had nothing on him. Solzhenitsyn had nothing on him. Unlike the CEOs, they could take the criticism. Hopefully, we can live the kind of lives that when we stand up for virtue, people will see integrity in our lives and accept our advice. Also, the third area is we can support virtuous education. Our colleges and universities have drifted away from teaching character formation, including individual responsibility and norms of right and wrong. Our republic is based upon virtue, civic duty, responsibility, and respect for the dignity of the individual. These are the types of leaders we need if we are to harness innovation to create prosperity that lasts. In conclusion, Jim Collins' landmark book, Good to Great, identifies companies whose leaders did not settle just for being good. They made moves required to achieve greatness. How does America regain its greatness? Alexis de Tocqueville, the Frenchman, answered this question a long time ago in his book, Democracy in America. America is great because she is good. If America ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. Virtue, together with unbounded innovation, will lead us back to greatness. Thank you very much.